pressured environment. And I should say that it's important to recognise, notwithstanding the errors that have been made, that there were 57,000 releases from our prisons, and these errors account for 0.5%. Now, for all victims, that is worrying, and the system should not be making these errors. But I do want to put those errors into context.
You talked about a paper-based system and how it was very complex. But given that the number of prisoners released by accident doubled between 23-24 and 2024-25, would you accept that your government's early release schemes made the system even more complex and more unmanageable, and that is partially responsible for the number of prisoners released in error?
Well, there were 800 releases in error under the last government.
In which year was that?
There was very serious. The figure was spiking from 2021. As I have said to you,
262 was an all-time high.
As I have said to you, that there were 4 different release schemes in the last stage of the last government, which added to complexity. And we put in an early release scheme that has also added to complexity. But that scheme was put in to make sure that we still had the prison places to lock up very bad people, I don't think, Mr. Fox, you're suggesting that we should not have done that, because you, I know, would be someone who wants to see criminals in the right place, and that's in prison. So yes, the truth is that our officers are dealing with a complex paper-based system. That is what we inherited. That is what we are unpicking. And just to remind you that under the last government, Rayon Nubi released in error, Louis Mutasavis released in error, William Fernandez released in error, and William Fernandez, who was released in error in March 2021, went on to commit horrific sexual crimes. That is to say that these errors have been happening under both governments. We need to bear down on it. We need to see that number coming down to historic levels. But I actually don't believe this to be a partisan issue. I believe this to be an issue that is occurring because of complexity, because of paper, and because junior people, both in our courts and in our prisons, are having to make fine assessments in a prison system that actually releases many people every year.
Lord Chancellor, you referred to the last government being responsible for 800 prisoner releases. I assume you're talking of the cumulative over 14 years. In the year you referred to, 2021, 54 prisoners were released in error, and I'm taking these numbers from your webpage. In 2023-24, it was 115, and that figure doubled to 262 in 24-25. That's a massive increase. It's 5 times more than 21-22. And I'm putting to you that actually it's the very complicated release scheme that your government put in place that is responsible for that spike.
Well, within the figures that you've just suggested, there was a spike from just over 50 to 121 under the last government. So in
Mr.
Fox, you do accept that there was a spike under the last government, and I've said there were 4 prison release schemes that contributed to that. We're in agreement. I've also said that the SDS scheme that we introduced when we came into government because of an emergency that I think he accepts, so we had to do it, has also led to that complexity. So I don't think there's actually disagreement.